When you're dealing with fraud, an outright fraud, criminal activity, I'm going to call this, through agents of the city or city officials themselves, you really have no recourse to try to correct this behavior.
We're back. It's Talking Racine. It's Monday morning. Welcome. Good morning, George.
Good morning.
Mr. George Myers. Good morning, Jim.
Morning.
Jim Spodek, our producer. I'm Dr. Ken Jorgen. And we are back. And speaking of backs, here we go. The Golden Backbone Award is about to be given for the first time in several months. And it's going out to two citizens this morning, to Mr. Michael Burmeister and Miss Karen Simpson. And the reason they're getting it is because they led the charge in the Recall Patricia Hansen, the DA movement. Now, they gathered a bunch of signatures. It was about, reportedly around 13,000, which wasn't enough to get over the threshold to actually create a recall election. But 13,000, that's more people that voted than voted in the last mayoral election. This is a significant effort on the part of a couple of citizens. And this involved a lot of people who typically feel uninvolved and unrepresented by the political process. So a lot of these signatures were people that were probably now going to become more involved in their local democracy, which I think is a great thing. And I supported the movement. I know you guys did too. There were a lot of reasons for it. It wasn't just the deaths of Dante Shannon and Tyrese West. I mean, they were horrible enough. But there are a lot of other issues, failure to prosecute other things that really need to be investigated and probably prosecuted. We've mentioned Machinery Row for one thing. There's a two-year-old complaint that was filed with the DA's office that has not been acted on, not been investigated. There's now a case where Second Amendment rights are very much being violated by everything that we've been able to discern. And they're vigorously going after the guy who was simply exercising his Second Amendment rights. That'll be coming up. But for this morning, to Michael Burmeister and Karen Simpson, you get the Golden Backbone Award. Good work, citizens. We appreciate you.
Congratulations.
Good. Now, we got a thing coming up here. Now, well, somebody recommended we rename this show to Three Old Dogs Barking on the Porch.
I thought that was a classic.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Rough. The thing we're going to be talking about today is the new Imaginarium Hotel that's coming to downtown Racine at the Zahns site. Now, I don't know if they're going to call it the Imaginarium Hotel, but I think that's a good recommendation.
It is. That describes it well.
Yeah. Have you got a name that you would maybe possibly like to invoke here?
How about the
Albatross Arms?
Albatross Arms, yeah, that was.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Because we all know what an albatross is. That's a reference to the old rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, I believe, wasn't it?
That was where I first learned about it.
Somebody had to wear a dead albatross around their neck for misbehavior. Anyway, an albatross is not something you want hanging around your neck. But Jim, you had an idea too.
Well, after reading this, the agreement that supposedly this developer has called the Mason Manor.
That's
it's definitely a Corey Mason project.
It had everything in there.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, it had the parking spaces for electronic cars, and it had
well, the thing that kind of just surprised me is there's going to be a hotel or a restaurant up on top of the building, which that can be cool for several months out of the year. But they also are going to put solar panels up there. Now, I don't know how you interface enough solar panels to be of any significance and still have room for a restaurant.
But it was going to be sustainable, has sustainability in it.
Yeah,
that's a good keyword. Smart city technology.
Mm-hmm.
Good paying permanent jobs. And most important, LEED Gold certification. Now.
Yeah.
Now that's...
No. Wait a minute, George. Platinum certification.
Yeah, they're guaranteeing gold. They're going for platinum. And that's got that's got it all. That is definitely right.
Well, there's
out
a
of-
whole bunch of stuff here that's it's I would think probably being mandated on the developers.
You know, I mean, I know, and I read this too. I thought, you know, I wanted to get down to the financial, but the thing is, this is everything that Corey Mason wanted in the other developers that took off and said, hey, you know, we can't make this happen because financially it doesn't make sense for us. But when you give them $7.5 million, all of a sudden, well, wait a second, maybe we can do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it came from. You know, I'm just going to go out on a limb a little bit. I think what's happened here is that building was bounced around from different banking. You know, it was in their REO. The banks had that on their books for a number of years. I don't know. That thing's been empty.
It's been vacant for over 30 years. Because they were talking about the Imaginarium when I came back to town in like 84, 85. Yeah. I mean, that was the building had already been empty for a while.
So I think what's happened here is that Bank of Elmwood was very much involved in Imaginarium. They since went out, and I believe Tri-City came in and took them over, and those are still on the book. That building was on the books. And I think these developers out of Milwaukee, or actually they're apartment guys, saw that as an opportunity to maybe put apartments in there. I think when they got to Racine, they bought it, we're going to do this. All of a sudden, whoa, we need a boutique hotel, and we'd certainly like to make it all very sustainable with a number of environmental components, which looking at those developers, they did some of that in the apartments, but that's a big stretch to a boutique hotel. And I think a lot of this is Corey Mason.
I'd like to emphasize that being an apartment manager myself, totally different project than running a hotel. It just is. I mean, it looks a lot similar because you have these rooms available for rent that people come and go, but other than that, there's not much similar between the two. My biggest concern is that how much are we going to get stuck with in the city? Now, we're already talking about putting in $7.5 million.
Yeah.
Which would be fine. But there's a couple of dots here that don't connect real well. One is that the city's putting in $7 million, and they're telling the developer that he must guarantee at least $25 million. You add those two up and you get $32 million, but it's a $29 million project. So what is really going on?
I'm thinking it's $1 million for each of us. 29 to 32.
That's what it's got to be.
Yeah.
The talking Racine's got.
Yeah, we need a little revenue.
We finally got to appreciate it.
Need a new camera.
No, we see it so many times is that you go into a project like this, and all of a sudden, in order the developer can't get his own financing, so the city starts to guarantee money, and then all of a sudden,
When has that ever happened, George?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Don't talk about Machinery Row or anything like that. We talked about that enough. But that's the thing I'm watching for. When I first saw this and I saw its perfection. Just had everything in there.
Oh yeah.
It had indoor, outdoor cafe, restaurant, movie theater style screening room, exercise facilities, sauna, banquet facilities. It was good paying permanent jobs, sustainability, smart city technology, gold certificate, LED gold certificate. I thought, this is a scam job. Nothing is that perfect. That was really what I thought, and I came and we discussed it a little bit, and we thought, well, maybe the developer just isn't that smart, which would be almost as bad.
Well, we don't want to.
We don't want to discourage him.
We don't want to put it on him. It could be you chalk it off to experience too. I mean, like Jim said, it's.
Well, I'm not
these are
talking about
apartment
IQ.
guys.
Did I say IQ? I should say maybe it's just his lack of.
I think it came down to it. Like here, I'm
this is
squeezing
not
the
an
pot.
apartment project.
And here's where I'm going, George, is when I went through this, initially I went in and say, all right, how much are we giving them? There's out of that TID district that was with the Johnson building down there, that actually made money. So roughly $2.8 million is coming out of that. Another, the one that really gets me is they're borrowing between $3.5 to $4 million, borrowing it from the state of Wisconsin, then basically pass through to the developer at a little bit more interest rate. I mean,
and that's what if it stays at $3.5–4 million. Okay, so we're out $3.5–4 million. I just don't want to see it going into the $25 million.
Right.
because
There's way too many questions here. When I looked at that development agreement, I mean, if it was me, I'd be running at full speed away from it because I just don't see the money being made here. Now, I'm looking at a developer, at a bank or a funding source, and they've also going to look at this. And I mean, there seems like an awful lot in this that is, I just don't see. And maybe it's out there, I don't know, but I'm just saying, I just don't see a bank loaning money on this project.
Jim, quite overall, the biggest problem I see is there's 2 hotels in that area that have already gone out of business.
Yeah.
This hotel is not close to a freeway. It's not close to an airport. It's not an easy place to get. Why would people want to go to all that trouble to meet here at a relatively small hotel when they can just walk out the door of a hotel or stop off on a freeway someplace and use one there?
Well, is there a population that is going to be downtown that is in need of this service? That's the question. I mean, is there a market for it?
And here's the thing: the answer to that is yes. But the problem is, it's like 4 companies. So that takes up 4 weekends, but there's 52 weekends in a year, and if a hotel's going to be stay in business and do well, it's got to do more than 4 weekends a year.
Where's the market
What do
study?
you mean 4 companies?
Well, like Johnson's Wax and Modine.
Oh, okay.
There are some big companies here.
And they could utilize it. But again, you got to have, and then is this going to have a large enough banquet facility to cover a larger venue, which probably not. Maybe Festival Hall does. But the fact is that we're subsidizing this project, and yet Festival Hall, we're subsidizing that also.
So we're subsidizing and competing with our own subsidies.
Yeah, and of course the private sector too, if you want to throw that in there. No, this is the Mason Manor here. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I mean, this was put together in the mayor's office. This was the developers came in, and I think they got, I don't want to call it sweet talk, but there certainly is some things here.
Here's the
And
thing.
maybe they're in love with it, and I hope that they
Here's
are.
what I would like to see the council do. Do at least this: make sure that the private developer has his money first before you start spending your $3-4 million. There's $2 million in release for construction financing. There's another $1 million in banquet facilities. Before we start spending any money, make darn sure that the developer has got his money well secured, because I think that's where the big thing's going to be. If he goes to a real bank to get money, and they look and say, well, what makes you think you can run a hotel in a city where they've just had 2 hotels go out of business? And, they hadn't been able to support one. What makes you think you're going to be able to make it go? And then they've got to come up with what any decent business does, is they come up with a plan or project or projection to show how this will actually attract, and they'll be able to run a business successfully there.
Well, one of the things that concerns me is the city administrator came up with the statement. It is as creative a public-private partnership as you are ever going to see. Now, when City Hall gets creative, it is traditionally cost the taxpayers a buttload of money, and we've got empty property all over the city.
Change creative with magical. I think it's a little more accurate.
The Imaginarium is
magical.
But why are we doing it? Why are we going into these projects like this? We just came out of. I mean, it's been.
I'll tell you why. Because we won't get to business and start doing something about our zoning and all the regulations that are blocking people from getting into business and just going in on their own and starting up without having to have all this money and mayor's approval and all these fancy programs in order to get started. That's the problem. If we would just do that, you would start seeing things like this just start to happen. Businesses would come up.
Well, it was not too many years ago. It was just a few years ago. I spoke with somebody, and this is somebody that had the financial wherewithal to do something with this building. And what was being proposed was a culinary arts institute, where there would be a restaurant there would be an educational facility there. I mean, they had it pretty well laid out, and of course. Mayor Dickert at the time, no, we got something else planned for that. Well, I don't know what it was. It couldn't have been this, because...
See, that's what type of garbage, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Just, if the city would just get out of the way, keep your police and fire that going there, kind of make sure things stay relatively peaceable so that honest people can do business.
collect the
Just leave it at
garbage,
that.
plow the snow,
Yeah,
you
that
know,
type of
make
stuff.
sure that the sewers are running and cleaned
So
up.
that's the real solution. This is like you say, it's magical. Did you say? Oh, creative.
Yeah.
But it's the thing is it's the type of thing that at least do this. At least put this little bit of reality in there. Make sure that this developer has got his money first.
And here's the other thing, George. Now I know that's kind of semi-written into that development agreement, you know, and to protect, and there's supposed to be some personal guarantees. But when that initial financing comes in, they're going to come in a large block, 20 million, 50, 25 million, whatever that might be. If they come in, they're going to definitely hog tie the developer, you know, into all this. Now, when you talk about, well, don't worry about the 4 million or the rest of it, if that does go bad, the city's out. There's no way that there's going to be enough left over for the city after that first mortgage comes in and takes over that project. So what I'd like to see is that the financing package is put in front of the Common Council and says this is how it's going to be financed by the developer. Here's the interest rate. Here's the term of the loan. Here is the guarantees that they're putting up toward this project, and that the city is not a guarantor on that mortgage.
Right.
That's
exactly
the
right.
most important thing, because the city has got a terrible record of financing. They've blown multiple millions of dollars on pie-in-the-sky ideas.
And another point of concern, I mean, look the way this is presented. New hotel coming to downtown Racine at Zahns site. Not proposed, coming. And the city council hasn't had an opportunity to vote on it yet.
Don't even
And
know what they're looking
the
at.
vote is going to take place this
Oh
week.
yeah, that's another. It's been
They have
in the
not
bill
been-
for a year.
Yeah.
And now they spring it on them a week before they have to vote on it. Here's another thing just to watch. If it's these developers, if it's them personally and their business personally, okay, that's one thing. But if you see there's a separate corporation been set up just for this project, be careful, because that means that it's limited where you can go to that corporation. You're not going to be able to go behind it into their assets up in Milwaukee.
So it's another instance of hurry up, we got to do this
Yeah,
now.
I know it.
We got to do
The
this
The
now.
amazing thing is exactly 5 years from the date they approved the
Oh, yeah,
machinery
yeah,
roll. 5 years to the day.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
so
Just in time for a celebration on that. Right?
exactly.
Yeah, in fact, there is going to be a big celebration down at Machinery Row at the Promenade. There's going to be the party at the Promenade. That's going to take place on the 21st of December, this month, one day after the actual official opening takes place, or one day after the official completion
Right.
is supposed to take place. So we're ready to party. There's going to be people down there, I'll guarantee it. You know, there's going to be food served.
It's going to be fun. There's going to be
There's going
music.
to be music. Yeah, it's going to be great. All the dignitaries are
A
going to be
ribbon,
invited. Yeah.
ribbon cutting. We're gonna do it upright, just
Damn
like
right,
it was
man.
supposed to happen.
But for right now, we're going to kind of switch gears. We're going to quit talking about this, and we're going to switch over to another topic, which is the continuum of.
The Machinery Row, basically the Promenade. We're going to talk about
Right.
the Promenade, and we're going to talk about the how the DNR, the information, the emails trail with the DNR on asking for an investigation, and how the DNR is looking at that. And we're bringing in a special guest, Harry Waite.
So hang on, we got another little segment coming up, and we'll be right back. Well, here it is. This is Talking Racine. Welcome back. This morning, George Myers is here with me as usual, and we have a special guest, Mr. Harry Waite. Say hello to the folks, Harry.
Good morning, folks.
Look out for this guy, folks.
Yeah, he's radical and crazy.
Welcome, Harry.
He's
Good to have you.
radical and
Thank you.
crazy.
Good to be here again. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to speak about a specific part of the Machinery Row project today. We've talked seemingly endlessly about Machinery Row, but there's a specific part of it that we want to delve into a little bit and expose to you and to several viewers that we hope are out there. If there are any natural resource people out there, hunters, fishermen, snowmobilers, that kind of thing, you're going to be interested in this show. Now, the part of the project, the Machinery Row project, is a thing called the Promenade, which was funded by the Department of Natural Resources, the DNR. The DNR was spending like several millions of dollars a year on various projects.
Some things the government does are stupid.
right?
Yes.
I mean, we can look at a list of
And
projects.
some
We
things
got
are
'em.
criminal.
I got a whole list of them. Delta Hawk, Butterbud, Summit Packaging, Ripworks, Racine Steel, a whole bunch of sites where money gets wasted. We're kind of gotten used to that, but this was out and out. I mean, this is fraud. If it was at best corruption. It was at worst fraud. In other words, they took money from the DNR under the pretense that it was for a promenade, for a sidewalk. That was never the intent of it. The intent was to spend it to like I said, fill up this slush fund, because there were some more bills that had to be paid. There were some expenses on the payments, interest expense payments that the owner was supposedly doing, and that they took it right out of the Knowles Nelson grant, right from the DNR. And the funny part of it was, in order to get this money, the city had to pretend to give money, $500,000 in property value.
Right.
Knowles Nelson only gives 50-50.
That was part of the straw man.
And the developer was going to donate half of the property.
Right.
The city was going to buy half, the developer was going to donate half.
Right, but the city's part was, they already had it, so they pretended to donate it so that they could get it back, so the developer could give it back, and then the DNR would put in the other half, which is $500,000 cash.
Right.
Half of it was just land, the other half was DNR cash, and so they took it right out of the sportsman.
So Harry, you've been through a little bit of this. You've contacted the Department of Natural Resources to find out what is going on with this Knowles Nelson grant and why the heck this thing was pushed
Promenade,
through.
what you call it, also included the link up with the bicycle path, the walkway, the canoe and kayak launch area that was supposed to be made accessible to the public, because part of all this money was to allow public access to the river, which, as Doc had referred, right, in private hands for over 100 years. So now what we have is literally a pile of rubble along the Root River, which is actually now locked off and fenced even more so than it was before it was in private hands.
When we discussed this, you were one of the people who looked at that and went, what the heck? And then you actually contacted the DNR, correct?
Yeah, I did. I started the project in June, and in July I started having regular correspondence with the DNR, and we presented what happened with the money.
Now let's jump ahead a year and a half. Now we're in early 2016. The city realizes that the escrow account, remember that $450,000 escrow account that was taken from the sellers, is now down to $22,000. But there's real estate taxes that have to be paid, and there are some contractors that weren't paid for some of the work that apparently was done, because there was very little work done on the property, but there were a few things done. The contractors were not paid. So they had filed liens on the property. So now the property has taxes due, and there's liens on the property, and only $22,000 left in the account, which again, they need money to make those payments that they said Blackwell was making. They had to replenish that account. How did they do it? They applied for a Knowles Nelson grant from the Department of Resources of the state of Wisconsin. Essentially, what they did was have Blackwell sign over 5 acres of land of the Machinery Road development for a walkway that they proposed to the public, that it would be a promenade to walk, for citizens to walk along the river shore. Remember, Blackwell shows up at the Register of Deeds as the owner on title, so there's no reason the DNR would question this donation. There was a matching grant, so what it was is Blackwell donated 5 acres for approximately $940,000. The DNR would grant 50% of that, $470,000, as a grant to help build that walkway for the citizens of Racine. Blackwell did not receive $470,000. That money went back into the escrow account controlled by the city. So the city acquired a grant from the DNR, took the money from the DNR, placed it back into that escrow account, paid real estate taxes, paid the liens on the property. Now, on September 6, 2016, Council member Sandy Widener brought to the attention of the Common Council that she had just discovered that a 10% kickback had been given by the sellers to Rodney Blackwell or the city of Racine. She also brought up that she was aware of the Knowles Nelson grant that they were approving that evening was funding this secret escrow account, and had some pointed questions for the city administrator.
And, part of it was a straw man being used to facilitate transfer of the property. And then there was a bait and switch going on with that. And, really the city never gave up control of the property. Mm-hmm. And so I started this process because there was no access to this property. I was actually seeking a resolution with the DNR to make sure that that money was properly used, that we did have that bike path, we did have the promenade, we did have the access to the river, so kayaks and canoers can use it, and fishermen, because this is a whole long corridor of what I call prime riverfront that's now locked up by the city.
Right, okay, so you're going to have to DNR to get them to push through the program that the money was for.
And force the city to actually build what was promised.
And what was the DNR's response when you sent some inquiries into them?
Well, they asked for more documentation, so we sent them a lot of documentation, and they just continued to come back and say, well, we really don't see a problem. This happens to a lot of projects that we get involved with. Well, that really isn't so.
Really? They said that.
Boy, if they got a lot of projects like that,
well,
no wonder
we've
they
got
cut back on that budget.
And they just said, well, we really don't see a problem, but if you find anything else, please forward it to us. Well, when you're dealing with fraud, and outright fraud, criminal activity, I'm going to call this, through agents of the city or city officials themselves, you really have no recourse to try to correct this behavior. It's a dead end street for us.
As we're shooting this program, we're about a week and a half away from the deadline by which this promenade was supposed to be built, done with, completed, and open to the public as part of a $65 million project, which has gone absolutely nowhere other than into the toilet.
Well, rubble, we got rubble out of it. We went from nice buildings
We actually had viable businesses in this property before.
There were 12 businesses
before the city actually started this process of eviction.
People were generating incomes, taxes were being paid on the property, et cetera, et cetera. Now we got a gravel pile that's yielding nothing and is completely shut off to the public. However, there is going to be a big celebration. A party on the promenade on the 21st of December, the day after the completion.
This party's now been in the makings now for a little over a month. So if you look at the Knowles Nelson application grant, completion date is fall of 2019. And we're going to actually celebrate the grand opening of this wonderful public access that both the city and the DNR has provided to us.
So all of the people who are responsible for this grand project are welcome to come down and explain their role in it. And if they don't show up, I guess we're going to have what? Effigies?
We're going to have effigies. We're going to make sure that they get their proper due.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's very important for people to understand why we're doing this.
So that's going to be December 21st at 11 a.m. down at the Promenade, or as close to it as we can get, because all of the gates and fences are locked up down there. So be sure to be there if you can make it. It's going to be a grand event starting at 11 o'clock, December 21st. That's a Saturday. Don't miss it.